Welcome back, everyone. This is the second part of our podcast with Kersten Kimura. Kersten is a certified macronutrition coach, personal trainer, and women's wellness coach. In this second part, we will discuss the role of physical activity and exercise in weight management. So, Kersten, what do you think? How important is exercise when someone has a weight loss goal, and what kind of exercise do you recommend?
Yes, of course, exercise is important. But I would say that the diet is still the number one when it comes to weight loss and fat loss. But yes, exercise is a great support. And of course, studies also show that those people who do both of these things, they nicely support each other. So if there's somebody who is only focusing on a diet but is not exercising, yeah, they can lose weight, but the results are better. And also because of the lifestyle change. A lot of times people feel like, okay, I'm more active. I also want to eat better. Or vice versa, I'm eating better now. I'm going to move my body more. So it's like this nice correlation between these two things. But of course, the other part when it comes to exercise is also just energy burn, calorie burn. And then the third one, which is really important, is muscle building. Because exercise, when it's mostly resistance training, then it does help us to increase our metabolism because we are building muscle. And muscle is really the active tissue that we need to be able to increase our basal metabolic rate, which we mentioned previously too. So the rate at which your body burns calories. So exercise is very important, and I think people get a lot better results when they do, of course, incorporate exercise too. Now, what kinds of exercise? I am a big fan of resistance training or strength training for muscle building, and then walking. So walking, simply everyday movement, also not just necessarily walking, but the stuff you do around the house, taking care of the kids, running errands, all these things add up actually. And they're really good way to gently increase your calorie burn. So exercise, a lot of times I feel like people think that their formal exercise is the biggest game changer, right? Like I have to do like these really hard CrossFit workouts. If I just do one a day, I'm good. But actually, what are you doing the other 23 hours of your day, right? So that's also really important. So staying in motion as much as you can is really a good way to support your weight loss and fat loss efforts.
I agree totally with you. And I just read an article actually today about Finnish people and how much they sit in a day or how much they move around. So it's like on average, a Finnish person sits. It was 9 hours and 17 minutes and stands for, I think, an hour and 45 minutes. So all in all, we stay put for more than 11 hours of the time that we are awake. Of course, it's an average, but still it gives some information. So when somebody comes to be your client, you probably ask about their activity levels. So do you measure it in some way, or do people report to you, or how do you do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I use something called the activity factor. So this is determined by what they tell me, how they exercise. So let's say that somebody says that they are doing 3 1-hour strength workouts a week, plus then I also ask about their steps, how many steps they get per day. If they don't know, then I just have them track for a week and see. And then, their activity factor is a certain number, right? And so when there's somebody, and I've had people like that who do like 7 workouts a week, very intense, then they, of course, have a different activity factor. So it's very important for me to know exactly how they work out so that I can get the activity factor right. Because if this factor is not right, then we don't know how we can increase or decrease their calories.
So what do you think? What is the current status of using different activity tracking technology in nutrition coaching at the moment?
Yeah, I think these are all very useful tools. And I think they can give people a lot of insight about like how much to actually move. Like you said too, most people, they're sitting, not most, but on average, people are sitting 11 hours a day. And I don't think people would realize it unless they actually tracked it or looked at it, and unless their watch or whatever device they use told them that, because they would be like, I'm not too bad, it's not too bad. And then when they see that number in front of them, they're like, oh my goodness, this is like half of my day basically that I'm not using or moving. So I think it's very valuable. It's also important for people to understand that they need to get up and move, and it's important to have some kind of goal. So I recommend most of the people, depending on their starting point, like try to take this many steps every day. And it depends on a person. I've had a person who, she said she's literally taking maybe 2,000 steps a day, only 2,000 steps a day. And then with her, I'm not going to tell them to start walking 15,000 the next day, but I will ask them to get their steps to 5,000 or 6,000. And so now if they use a activity tracker, then they're way higher motivated. They have like a target in mind. Okay, I'm going to have to hit that number. And then they're more likely to get out and actually get the work done, so to speak. And then, of course, when there's somebody who is already at higher steps, even they may still need to increase, even if they're taking 8,000, but they want to do better for their health. Then I may ask them to do, take 10,000 steps. And again, activity trackers are really, really useful tools for that. And I think a lot of times when people, it's late at night, they're like, oh my goodness, I haven't moved at all, but they wouldn't realize it again unless they didn't look at the tracker. So that's like a nice reminder for people to use them.
Yeah. I've actually done some tracking for myself also, and I've had quite surprising results. It's been 2 times. First, I'm a physical therapist, and quite many people think that our work is really active. So I tried it, and I was quite surprised. I only took around, I think it was around 4,000 steps during my working day, which I thought would be much more. And my working day was quite passive. There's a lot of like consulting with people, talking with people. I do stand up quite a lot, so it's not like sitting, prolonged times. That's not the problem, but it's not overly active also. So to be fit and healthy, I do need to have more exercise. And another period of my time was when my child was a baby. And I thought that I have all the time to exercise. And I really thought my life is very active. But when I tracked it, then it seemed I did work out every day almost. But the rest of the time I was watching TV and series and stuff. And so I was surprised how passive it really was. So yes, even if you're kind of in the industry and know it's when you have yourself checked, it can be quite full of surprises.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially when you said you did work out every day, almost every day, right? But the other movement was on the lower side. Actually, just to share some numbers. So our daily energy expenditure, a lot of people think that exercise is the main thing, right? But actually, there are like 3 biggest calorie burners when we think about like how much we burn in a day. So there's the BMR, the basal metabolic rate, and then there's the what we call NEAT, which is the non-exercise associated thermogenesis. That's basically the calorie burn that happens, like that is not your formal exercise, but the movement that we just talked about. And then there's the last one, which is exercise, right? And so now the percentages are about 70% of our daily calorie burn is our basal metabolic rate, right? And then to get that higher, so that our body burns calories even when we are at rest, we have to have good amount of muscle tissue, right? So strength training really helps with that. So you can chill a little bit more. You don't have to like run all the time. If you have enough muscle on the body, then it will kind of do the job for you, right? So that's 70%. That's the biggest dial mover. And that's why I'm really, telling people to pick up some weights, right? And then the second part is the walking and the running errands and all that. And that's about 20% of our daily calorie burn. And then formal exercise is only about 10%. And so I think this is where people get it wrong. Like, oh, I did my workout, but that's also really tiny part of what you're doing to do other things too.
Yeah, it's a good point. And then now we come to to one other misunderstanding that I'm not a nutritionist, but of course, when I talk to clients, I see that I think some people kind of people sometimes don't really see what's the difference between weight loss and fat loss. So do you see that, or do you, for example, see sometimes women, especially maybe being afraid of gaining some muscle? Do you have any comments on that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, a lot of comments. Yes, these are definitely two. They're different things. They're not always the same thing. Of course, when you do lose body fat, also your weight probably goes down. And especially when we talk about a person who is overweight, who is obese, has some extra weight on them. Yes, they lose body fat, and then they also lose weight. But I am not a fan of this super high focus on the scale weight only. And I am way bigger fan of, if we want to see body composition change, is the composition actually changing. So the composition means like fat tissue versus muscle tissue. So it can totally happen that your weight on the scale stays the same, and then you're able to just have this nice switch or this like change in your body composition. And how it happens is that when you start eating higher protein, which we talked about, and when you start lifting weights. So you can definitely have a nice body composition change. And I've actually had a couple of clients, one particularly comes to mind right now, who, when she started with me, she was by no means overweight. She's pretty skinny, right? So she was running 6 days a week, and she loves running. And I was like, cool, let's keep you running, but let's also add some weightlifting, right? And so she started out at 130 pounds, and then she started three strength sessions in addition to 3 running sessions. And then she gained 2 pounds, and she looked completely different. So you could see like a lot more muscle definition. You see like her abdominals kind of popping out more. You see some like shoulder definition. Posture was a big one, by the way. You can see that the forward head was way less because she was working her back now. So she pulled the upper back muscles back and down. And so now she had better posture. So she looked completely different. And the other example is actually my own personal experience. So I shared this on social media. So I had like 2 side-by-side pictures of myself. And then I had literally lost, in the second one, I had lost like I think it was like 680 grams. I did the calculation, 680 grams, I think 1.5 pounds, which is very little. And a lot of people would be, oh, so disappointed, right? Because I didn't lose enough fat. But then you see like the difference is big, right? I was like a lot leaner on that second picture. But people would think, and I asked, what do you think, how much weight I lost? Oh, 5 kilograms, 10 pounds. I'm like, no, no, I didn't lose that much at all. So yeah, they are two things. They sometimes correlate, but not actually even always.
Yes, definitely. And I think also it's important to talk about the muscle gain when we talk about a bit older people, because muscle mass is very important to kind of maintain your performance of daily living. So I guess strength training overall is important, just to emphasize it even more.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're right. Especially, yeah, like you said, when it comes to older people, and I find especially with like menopausal women too, because osteoporosis starts to happen, right? So we want to strengthen the bone, and the bone, and muscle, they're attached, right? So when you strengthen the muscle, you also strengthen the bone, and muscle is your tissue of longevity, to be honest.
So as in nutrition, when you analyze what they eat and what are the eating habits, are there any nutrients that we are usually not getting enough? Of course, I know it's just like an average, but it tends to be, I guess, that you see the same patterns going on. So is there something you would like to comment on that?
Do you mean in terms of macronutrition, like macronutrients?
Macro and vitamins, maybe fiber, yeah.
So protein is the first one that comes to mind naturally, because you have to put some effort into it. If you don't pay attention to protein, most people would undereat that. So protein, as far as macros, comes to mind first. When it comes down to fiber, yes, I would say it's probably a little bit less of an issue, but it's still, so what we recommend is about 25 grams of fiber per day. And again, that's one of these things, if you don't pay attention, it's so easy to be like, around 15 or so. And then but fiber is really important for like good bowel movements and staying fuller longer. And of course, the vitamins that we get from fruits and vegetables, which is the main source of fiber, right? So these are things that I see. And also I have to mention, my personal kind of opinion is that meat, like women in general, tend to be very afraid of meat. And when it comes, especially red meat, there's this stigma around like red meat is bad, it's bad for the planet. And my take is that it's very nutrient dense food. And if it's sourced in the right way, ethically, then there's nothing wrong with that, right? And a lot of times when people start eating more red meat, they get their iron, they get their copper, they get, organ meats is the next step, which I know a lot of people in America don't do, but like me, grown up as an Estonian, like no issues. Yeah, I'll eat the liver. So if you eat red meat and even organ meats, you really boost your energy. You get your B vitamins, which is one of the, like people tend to be low in that, especially those who avoid meat. So I would say I would encourage people to find like good sources of meat and have red meat and have it, at least a few times a week and you notice the difference in your energy, in your workout recovery. So I would really encourage people to have more of that. And then, of course, I'm not doing any testing for people, so I cannot do that. But pretty common vitamin deficiencies tend to be, of course, vitamin D. Then C is sometimes lower. And I think magnesium is one of the minerals that most women should take, because this is the mineral that gets depleted first when we are under stress. And I think most people are under stress. So I would say these, what did I mention? 4 now? B, D, C, and then magnesium.
Okay. So just to come back, we were mainly talking about people who maybe exercise a little bit too little and tend to have a sedentary behavior. But do you think like tracking somebody's steps or activity would be beneficial for those people who have the opposite problem? So they might, could you see it beneficial for people who have too much exercise, too few calories, or do you see any obstacles with these groups of people?
Yeah, I love that question. Honestly, I've seen some people who get very obsessed with movement too, very obsessed. And this is exactly kind of the group of people you described. They are already naturally over exercising a lot. And then they may have caused themselves some serious hormonal issues. So I have worked in the past with a lot of women who have lost their menstrual cycle because they were so, and I was one of them, they were so overtrained. And then one of the things that we do is that we take out the running, because a lot of them like run a lot and do like in general a lot of cardio training, because they think this is the calorie burner. And then we're like, okay, we have to like get your body out from that stressed out place, right? And then let's switch that to walking, right? So just for time being, when your body is healing and recovering. And then some people do turn this into another obsession. And so now they're walking 4 hours a day, right? And then I've had people who I'm like, you have to cut back, because even if it's like a gentle way of moving your body, it still adds to your daily calorie count. And if you're somebody who actually needs to put on weight because your hormonal system is like so done and you're exhausted and fatigued, but now you're walking 4 hours a day, then we gotta cut that down. And it's very hard for them. It's some kind of like deeper issue that needs to be solved there, because then we just replace one thing with another thing, and that still remains obsessive. So yes, I've had clients. I remember one again specifically who we had to work hard to get her steps down from 20,000. And for some people this might be like cool and great. Maybe on a day when you take a longer hike, this is what you hit. But she was like every single day, and she couldn't let go of that. And I was telling her that this is counterproductive to what we're trying to do here. So yes, telling them to cut your steps down to maybe 15,000, which I know for most people is like, oh, that's a lot of steps. But yes, you're totally right. Like you can use the tracker that way too. And it's sort of like a weight loss, in that, a lot of people, let's say that we have a typical person who is overeating and eating a lot of highly processed foods and is overweight because of the overconsumption of calories, right? So they use a tracker like MyFitnessPal to take their calories down. But then on the other hand, we also have people who are severely undereating, that 1,200 calorie person that we talked about earlier. So they need a tracker to increase. So it's, those trackers, fitness trackers, food trackers, you can use them all kinds of ways. And I think they're very, very helpful.
Okay. So just, I would also like to talk about your own program, WHOLEistic Macros. So would you like to tell the listeners what is this all about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sure. So WHOLEistic Macros, first of all, it's spelled with WHOLE. So it's whole, which, everyone knows what that means. So holistic because, yes, macronutrition is very cool. It's a great tool to help people to achieve their best body composition, but it's not only about body composition. And so I want to make sure that my clients also have healthy hormones, that they are sleeping well, that their mindset is strong, that they don't get, caught up in like obsessive thoughts or whatever. It's just like a holistic idea of nutrition. And it's funny, like how this name actually came to be. So I love that name, and I didn't come up with it, but I want to share the story, how it happened. So I was at a mastermind. So I am in a business mastermind group. And then we had our meeting in Austin, Texas. And so we were sitting at a table. So there's like me and then 3 other girls from our group. And then our mentor asked us, so if you had to describe how your approach is different in what everybody else is doing, how are you describing it? And so I was describing, yes, I want to make sure people have healthy hormones and that they get their periods and that they eat mostly healthy and that they're like, gentle with themselves, don't beat themselves up. It's like this like bigger thing that's just only macros. And this one girl at a table, she like wrote 2 words on a piece of paper and she showed it to me. And she's like, WHOLEistic Macros, this is what you're doing. I was like, oh, this is so good. This is so genius. Because I think a lot of coaches do, and this is not to throw anybody like under the bus, but I'm just saying that a lot of coaches do focus only on, okay, let's get your macro side, boom, 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 right? Every single call, this is what you talk, how much protein you got, how many carbs you got. But I'm also like, hey, are you sleeping? Hey, like, are you recovering? Instead of like, you got to get your butt to the gym, right? I'm like, are you ready for it? How's your body recovering? So I'm like taking like a bigger approach and making sure that the person stays healthy overall, because I've been through a bad burnout myself and I don't want anybody to experience that.
I think that's great. And so if somebody would like to contact you, where can people find you? And another question also for our Finnish listeners, can people approach you in Finnish also?
Yes, you can approach me in Finnish. I've had a client from Finland also, actually 2 of them. And you can find me at my website, which is urbanjane.co. So make sure you don't put com there. It's co. And then on Instagram, it's my first and last name spelled together. So these are probably the best places to find me. And I do also have a YouTube channel and a podcast, which is called Balanced Vibes. And you can find that everywhere, except for Spotify, unfortunately, at this point. But everywhere else, all the major podcast platforms, you can find that as well.
I know you have almost 100 episodes on your podcast, so I encourage everybody to listen, and we will put your information into the info of this podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
So Kersten, I would really like to thank you for being here. I really enjoyed our chat. So yes, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.